Welcome to Scene Change, a podcast by the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division. All about equality, opportunity, accessibility, and the arts. Here, you'll learn adaptive techniques from performers in the know. We are changing what it means to be blind, one stage at a time. Thank you for joining us today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scene Change. I'm your host, Lizzie Muhammad Park, and today's episode is going to be very, very interesting. So it's just in time for winter. There's no genre of music, in my opinion, that's more reminiscent of cold weather than the blues. So we went out and found you someone who plays the guitar and harmonica at the exact same time. He's based in Brooklyn, New York, and graduated from the Berklee School of Music. Oh, and by the way, not only did he graduate, but with top honors. So I don't really need to say much more. This episode is November with Noe. Welcome to the show, Noe.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So let's get right into it. We'll just start at the very beginning and we'll just kind of take it through the various stages of your life, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
So you are based in Brooklyn right now, and
Yes.
you will have to tell us about your how you find gigs and so on and so forth in the city. But you're originally from Italy, is that right?
Yeah. I grew up in Italy, near Bologna, and started playing guitar when I was 12. But I was into music before that. Played a little piano, a little cello, whatever stuff. But guitar, harmonica when I was 12, and then I went to different schools, learned different ways of playing guitar. I was taking a lot of different courses for different genres. So that's also kind of why I have a very unorthodox technique. Like everybody that looks at me and my right hand are like, man, what is this guy doing? Because like sometimes people are like, you play like you're playing the bass, or you're doing whatever you're doing. It's like everybody that's orthodox about one genre usually looks at me funny. Um, but yeah, so I studied jazz. I studied like fingerstyle, acoustic guitar, and classical, kind of all a mishmash of different things because I wanted to learn as much as I could. And then I got a scholarship to Berkeley, and you know, came to the U.S. in 2010, and I've
Awesome.
been in here ever since.
Awesome. So I'm hearing you say that you've essentially taken these different classes to learn different styles of music, and then you kind of combine them. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of use everything. I mean, I have a yeah, like as far as my technique and my approach to stuff, I use a lot of different styles and different techniques that sometimes are opposite to each other, both obviously visually but also sonically. It's just depends on the sound I need. Certain things sound better on electric, and certain things sound better on acoustic, and you need to kind of be able to combine it all depending on the genre. I don't play with a pick either. I tried, I didn't like it. I used it for a while, but I don't know, I didn't like it, so I don't use it. I just use my fingers for everything.
Could you give us an example of the opposite styles, like how they might sound or how they might like
Oh yeah,
what does
well,
that mean? Yeah, yeah.
I can just show you. It's probably easier to hold on. Let me get the guitar. So I use a footstool on my left, under my left foot because I hold the guitar on my left leg like the classical guitarists do. So that's what I
Hmm.
started with. So that's already something that's a little bit unusual. But if I'm trying to like play like arpeggios, stuff like that, I just use just my thumb, my fingers like that. But then like if I'm soloing, if I want to get more of this sound, you like kind of pull on the strings from underneath. I just got more like that bluesy sound.
Hmm.
And my hand is kind of more like diagonal to the body, so I can also palm mute. I mean, I was getting a little technical. I don't know how technical people are on this show particularly, but like, if you put the hand next to the, on the strings, you can get more of this dark sound, which is helpful for certain things. And like you alternate and play bass and the melody at the same time. But if I'm playing, different kind of stuff and I want a different sound, I'll move my hand more perpendicular to the guitar and then I use because my nails are all broken, but I still have them a little bit, and so like I kind of use them to obtain more of a pick sound. So like it's just all these different combinations of technique that I have that are from all these different kind of things that I learned over the time and over the years, and you can just kind of I just kind of combine all of them and in a very kind of unorthodox way depending on the sound that I need. But if I had to explain to someone like where to start, like what's the most important thing, I'm like I don't even know. Like you know, it just this is kind of what worked for me with a lot of different schools of thoughts combined together. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, that's why I'm saying it's very unorthodox and very confusing for most people.
No, but
Like, what
it's
is this
cool
guy
because
doing?
it's gonna give you a sound that no one else has, right? Because you're just blending all these different things. So that's really,
Yeah, I
really
guess so.
good.
I mean, in a certain way, yeah. I mean, I you definitely notice that if somebody plays with their fingers, they only play like a certain way. They don't
Hmm.
have different sounds because they can only do one thing or the other. Not everybody, but a lot of people are that way. And classical musicians, what you should do if you play classical music is keep your nails really long and have that sound that's more like very defined and bright. Um, but I can't because I play too hard because I play rock gigs and sometimes I have to, and so like if you do that, your nails are definitely going to go or not be as good as they, would be if you're playing classical music. So classical music is kind of off the table. Plus it's memorizing all that stuff. It's a lot of work, and I definitely would never be a classical, concert guitarist. I like improvising. I like creating music on the spot, so it's not really my world. Um, but I started with it, so some of that technique comes from that.
You have these different music styles that you learned and that you combine. Do you combine anything, say like culturally? I don't know much about like I don't know if there's like a certain style of like Italian guitar playing or if there's like a style of like Italian blues versus like US
Oh
classic rock type
no,
thing. You know what I
well,
mean? Like,
no,
is there a difference or is it all the same?
Italian blues is not something you should listen to. I mean, it's like I mean, I know that sounds mean, but at the end of the day, like the Italian folkloristic music is different. It's more like like there is a lot of cool music actually coming that came out of Italy over the years. That also was influenced by American music, like all the Fred Buscaglione and all these guys from the 50s, and then you have the singers, songwriters from the 70s, Battisti, Dalla, like all these De André. It was real good poetry, really good lyrics, and just cool music. Um, but I mean, it's definitely part of me. It's not what I play. Um, and I moved to the U.S. so young that it's kind of like, and I was into the blues so early. I got into blues so early that it's just kind of been that sort of path. More American music is more of what I play, generally speaking. But I mean, it's definitely there.
Hmm.
I mean, it's part of me. I'm not trying to say that I don't have it in me. There's a lot of great music that came out of Italy. Um, over the years. So, but no, I mean, there's so the cool Italian music is up until like the 70s. There's a lot of cool stuff that has it's like a mixture between American music and Italian folklore, and there's definitely some stuff that has a mixture of both in a certain way, and it's cool. And I definitely appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, generally what I play is more a mixture of American music. I play a little gypsy jazz also, so that's part of it also because one of my teachers, that's all he plays. That I studied with in Italy, so I learned a lot of the Django Reinhardt kind of stuff. So yeah, I would say that's kind of the mixture is a lot of American music mixed with other things is what I end up. playing.
Really interesting, really interesting. So you did say that you got into the blues pretty early, and I think that is I would totally agree. That's really interesting. How did you get into the blues?
Well, I mean, it was pretty spread over there. Like like there's a lot of blues musicians in Italy. A lot of people that I grew up with also that play that kind of music. But uh, I started playing guitar. My teacher showed me, that Blues Brothers version of that song. Sweet Home Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. It's a fun little riff. Um, but from that I kind of it was like what 2003, so stuff wasn't as easy to get. But my dad was pretty tech savvy, so we would get some stuff from the internet, trying to figure it out what was who did what and all that kind of stuff. So um, that was kind of how I got into it.
Mm-hmm.
Started getting stuff online, going to record stores, buying CDs, and you he was definitely supportive in that, and I just resonated with me. I didn't really understand English well then. Um, obviously it's not my first language, so it was more the voices and those sounds that I gravitated towards. There was something that sounded really sincere and like it was representative of something. I wasn't really sure what it was then. I was like 12, but something resonated with me, and just those sounds and those voices, and that's really what brought me to it.
Oh, for sure. Music in itself is a language. You don't
Yeah, of course.
have to understand, like what people are saying, or even like every single word is like you can totally just feel the vibe, and you know what's going on. So I
Yeah.
completely understand what you mean when you say that. Can you just tell us real quick, because I have a feeling people are gonna want to know, what is gypsy jazz?
Oh, it's like that. Like this kind of music that has more of a, that sort of feel, and you have the violin playing on top of you. You you understand. Like
Yeah, it's
you
so much
see,
fun.
that
Ah.
song. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not Gypsy King. Everybody that says that Gypsy King is Gypsy Jazz, I get mad at. I'm like, that's. I mean, Gypsy King has a reason to exist, but
Mm.
Gypsy Jazz is not what they do. Um, and now there's this whole thing about, um, I don't know if the genre will change name because Gypsy is a little bit of a derogatory
Ah,
term.
I
So
see.
there's this thing. It just makes it a little bit. I think we'll have to find some other way to define it at some point. Among people that play that genre, that's what it's called.
Gotcha.
But I mean, gypsy is not a positive word. I know it comes from that culture. It really does come from. Django Reinhardt was, one of those people that lived like the situations that they do live in, and so like it does come from that culture. But I think that I'm not sure what it's going to be defined as in the future, or what's going to happen. I can't say, but amongst the people that play it, I think that's what it's called.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah, no, that
but
makes sense.
it's that type of music. I'm sure you kind of understand what it sounds like.
Definitely, definitely.
And there's a few tunes that I play where I play harmonica and keep that rhythm going. Where I just kind of you know do that, and it's a lot of fun because it's just different. And I mean, I'm not the best guitarist for that genre. There are some people that literally play this like 12 hours a day and just have a lot of speed and a lot of stuff, and that's not never what I really want it to be. But it's nice to have it as part of what I do.
Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And speaking of the harmonica, actually, which came first, the guitar or the harmonica?
Together, really,
Together.
Bob Dylan is what got it started. Um,
Ah, that makes sense.
so that's
Yeah.
that's how that came together. So
Yeah, so one thing I heard you mention having the support of your family, and that's always something that I'm really interested to hear about. And also, I think a huge part of why our listeners come to the show is because there are people who don't have the support of their families. Maybe their
yeah.
families feel like there's impossibilities there because of their vision loss or different visual acuity. You know,
Yeah, of
however
course.
you want to phrase it, right?
Yeah.
So, my question for you then is, was blindness a factor in your decision to play music at all? Was it just something that you've always loved and you said that, you're going to do it either way? And then as a follow-up question, how did your family support um, or lack thereof, if there was any of that there, how did your
Yeah.
family's opinion of it affect your decision to pursue music?
It for me it kind of was the only thing that I really gravitated towards because I've always been passionate about music since I was, like 6 or 7, and at least for what I remember. But I was into it before that, and so I it just was always around. But for me, when I started to play, it was not a thing of like, oh, this is gonna be my job. It was more like this is what I like to do, and my parents saw that I had a perfect pitch and all that. They didn't really know what that all meant, but like I could recognize the notes. If somebody played a note, I could tell you what it was, like all that stuff. So like that, it kind of felt like okay, you need to be into it because that's like where your talent is, I guess. And so that was very functional, and they supported throughout everything, but they never really had the child prodigy connections. You know how sometimes you have like the child that's like 5 years old that's on TV telling you notes and stuff. And I'm kind of glad that I wasn't that because I feel like I know a few people that have been through that, and it kind of burns you out, and then you have to like basically change your path because you just don't want to be that. You're not ready to handle that, and then you become famous and you become like someone's puppet because you can do something that other people can't. And I don't like that concept. I don't know. I mean, sure, there are some child prodigies that have made it to be really great people, but I feel like a lot of the times when you are that, it could be. I'm not saying that it always is, but there is a possibility for it to be problematic in the future, because there's just expectations, and you only live. You, I don't know if you can really live a normal life because you always have this pressure and all this stuff. So I don't know. I'm glad I didn't have that, even though I probably would have more money now and I would be, more successful and whatever. But I mean, it's getting there. I have a name for myself in New York, and everything is working out, so I can't complain. Um, so yeah, they definitely supported me, and also, the thing is, I was always good in school, so it's not that they could be like, "You're not good enough in school, so we gotta cut the music part off." Like I always did really well, um, in everything, and there was definitely a bit of pressure in that, like just being good in school and figuring stuff out. Like there was definitely a little bit of a bit of push, not necessarily always positively, into doing this and that, and like, oh, you got to make sure you got a college degree, you got to make sure you do this and do that, and I did. So it was cool, and it was worth it, to do all that education and stuff. But I mean, I guess I was lucky that what I was pushed towards, is what I wanted to do anyway. And I definitely realized that it's hard for us, blind people, to find employment and stuff. So it's I definitely didn't want to end up in an office answering phone calls. That doesn't sound really fun.
Not your style.
No, I mean it's like, if somebody likes to do it, but I feel like we can do better than that. But it's hard for us to do, and that's because it's art. People don't hire us, and now that there's all this stuff is on technology, it should be so much easier for us to get work, but it still isn't because a lot of the portals are not accessible, and some people make it work, but man, like it's always something. I'm sure you know better than me, so you know it's hard. But yeah, they definitely supported throughout, and I think I've, in a certain way, done more than what they thought I would. Um, I mean, my mom is not alive anymore, so she only saw me graduate from college, which that was cool. But I mean, I definitely am. I'm not where I thought I would be, but I guess in a good way. I never thought I would move to New York, and now I'm here. So like it's great, and musically I'm doing a lot of different things, and it's just it's really great, and the support has been vital. But if somebody doesn't have it, I think, even if you can't get all the education that I got, um, because I know that some people have a hard time letting blind people take chances and do stuff like, but it's possible. And if you spend some time on your instrument, and I had you know good years good enough that I could figure out a lot of the stuff even if I didn't study. Yeah, studying was nice and was important, but now there's so much stuff available on the internet anyway. Like YouTube has all these courses and all these different things. It's actually a lot easier now than what it used to be.
Hmm.
So I think that even if you don't have a supportive family, you can you can do something. Eventually you'll have to figure it out. But I mean, I think that if you have the talent and the commitment, you can get there. Like, YouTube is a wonderful source. And if you like a song or you want to figure out something about a technique, there is definitely courses out there and lessons and stuff that's available for free too. So I mean, now it's a lot easier than what it used to be. I mean, when I was growing up, remember, I was reading Braille music and I did solfege and I got all that stuff done. It was hard to get material. And I mean, I don't even use a lot of the technology that's available. Like, I know that you can slow down music now to learn it. I don't necessarily need to do it for the stuff I do, though. I just kind of learn it. I put my Google speaker on and tell it to play the song and whatever. But I mean, so many people have a lot of access to technology and can do a lot of different things. So it's possible out there if you just look for stuff. It's a lot easier than what it used to be because a lot of the stuff is accessible now. And you can also create your own songs with Pro Tools and Sibelius. And if you put a little money aside and buy them and figure out a way to learn them, like, if I was able to do it, I'm not some like special person like that has whatever skills. Like, I especially when it comes to technology, there are people that are way better than me. So like, there is definitely ways to figure stuff out. Yeah, a lot more than what it used to be even 20 years ago when I started. So I think it's possible. You just kind of have to be determined and not let them tell you that you can't do it. You figure out what you have. And I obviously understand that affording everything is impossible. And I actually hate when there is like these shows where people are like, if you dream and believe in it, everything is possible. I don't know about that. Like, that stuff makes me mad because I know that what was available for me allowed me to do what I can do now. So like, if I didn't have everything I do, I probably wouldn't be where I am. And I'm not saying that we grew up with a lot of money, but I definitely having the support, and I worked for it. Obviously when I was in school, I was doing stuff and making sure that I got the awards and the scholarships and everything. So it's not that I had everything given to me, but I definitely had something. And you have to have a little something. But with that little something, it could just be you have a guitar that's in the house, or I mean, there are guitars for $100 now available. People give them away. Like, there is ways to acquire stuff that's not that
Hmm.
expensive. So when you do stuff, you have to think like that. If you don't have certain possibilities, and then you just you figure it out for the best of your abilities. And I think that dreaming of being a superstar is useless. Like, I've never felt that way. For me, it was always like, oh, how can I get better at playing this song or this? Like, trying to think of stuff that was reachable for me at that moment. So like, when I first started playing guitar, I wasn't trying to play, like, I wasn't trying to do complicated stuff like that. I was more, like, I was like trying to do simple things because that's what I felt like I was able to do. Like, I didn't like feeling overwhelmed by something that was too hard. Like, you'll get there eventually if you get good at the simple stuff first. It doesn't work the other way around. So I think a lot of the times people have this pressure of becoming superstars or having like this thing of just making it big and being like this person and being like that person. Yeah, sure, it's good to have inspirations, but I mean, if you're starting to play guitar yesterday, you're not going to be able to play complicated stuff in a year. You need a while. So like, just try to find stuff that is in your reach, instead of thinking all the time about what you can't do. Like, there is certain things that you can do. And I know when I started, like, there's a lot of things I couldn't do. So I think that having more of a step by step approach is will get you a lot of places instead of just like being like, oh, I can't because I can't sound like this or I can't sound like that, and so like I'm just gonna give up. Like, nah, it doesn't work like that. We all improve by little steps, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so you taking this step-by-step approach, it also sounds like one of your first steps was to try different instruments. You mentioned cello, we know about the harmonica, we know about the guitar,
I
how
played
were
a
you
little
able
clarinet too.
in clarinet?
Yeah, piano for a year, just different things. But it's really, guitar. Once I, got into Bob Dylan and stuff, is really when I started. Like, you have to, practice every day, and you have to have fun doing it. So, like, I've never been one of those that sat there like, oh, let me practice 8 hours. Like, I've never done that. That's. I feel like that's. I'm not. I mean, some people work well that way. That's not me. I get bored. Like, sure, I'll practice if I don't know it until I get a grasp of it. But at the end of the day, it's really for me. It's always been about learning songs and figuring out stuff that I enjoy to play. And so I've never been like the most technically advanced player. Um, like there are some people that have amazing speed, but I just felt like that was kind of. I was like, what's the point of that? Sure, you can play some fast stuff, but what is that going to give you? You know what I mean? Like, and so much of the stuff that ends up making it successful, like, yes, they can. I can do some of that, but it's more about the feel, making the music that feels good, having a good time.
Hmm.
Like being able to play without rushing or slowing down necessarily. Just being able to hear and listen and adapt to whatever is happening on the stage. That's really what's going to get you the gigs. It's not going to be the speed. Like, that's helpful, but it's not the main thing. So like a lot of times I would even like if there's a song I don't know, I could grab a guitar and figure out a part, do something. I can do that, like, and that's for me is more useful than spending hours and hours doing exercises. Like, you know, it's kind of like when you do sports and you spend hours and hours training and then you never do a match or a game. It's like what's the point, And I definitely do, but I definitely when I practice towards what I need to actually play. So if there's something I don't know, or like a technique I don't know, I'll figure it out and work my way up to it. But in a way that I can use on a show, not just because.
No, that makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. And it sounds like you're really going for things that are useful to you, like and relevant to what you're going to be performing, what you're going to be doing, instead of just techniques to
Well,
sort of like what? Go ahead.
yes, yeah, definitely. But there is definitely something though about learning as much as you can. Like, that's why I
Hmm.
work so much in a lot of different genres, because I can kind of play a lot of different types of music. So like if I have to back up a singer, let me figure out how to support the singer so the song doesn't feel empty. you know
Mm.
and so like I have all that stuff worked up and figured out. And I mean, obviously there are people like Charlie Hunter is amazing and he does stuff that I can't do. But generally speaking, I have the harmonica, so sometimes I'll play a backup vocal line on the harmonica and add like horn lines or something like that. Just and I try, and a lot of the stuff I work stuff up on the gig too. Um, like come up with a range. Like I don't sit at home unless there's something that I know that I need to do for a specific song. Like, I kind of figure it out as I'm working with someone what's needed, right? Because
Hmm.
sometimes people just like simpler things, and sometimes people, certain things sound better, like more complicated. So it just works itself out as you play with someone. So I always try to think like I'm not like, oh, this is set. Like, I always try to think of different ways of doing things. Even when I'm doing solos or doing things, I'm always trying to figure out something different. And I think that's a big thing for me as far as keep evolving and stuff. Like, oh, okay, I did this for so long. Next time I play, I may try something a little bit different and see how that works out.
That makes
So
perfect sense. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's my approach.
So we've talked about the guitar and the different styles that go along with that. Are there different styles to playing the harmonica? Did you study those as
Harmonica
in depth?
mostly self-taught. Um,
Hmm.
because you can hear your way through it. Um, but yeah, there's definitely different styles of playing harmonica. Like there's the like the blues kind of way of doing things, and then like more of a jazzy kind of situation. And for me, because I could play guitar, like I would learn something on guitar and then kind of transpose it on harmonica. But I mean, there's blues stuff.
Yes.
But I mean, a lot of blues guys, they kind of just stay over this part, the lower part of the harmonica, and a lot of harmonica players, because it's such a different kind of instrument, they actually learn things by patterns without necessarily thinking in a more musical, like standard theory kind of way. So like
Hmm.
if they what like what I mean by that is, I know music theory, and I have an understanding of traditional like harmony, both classical and jazz, right? So like if I'm improvising, I'm thinking of scales and arpeggios and all these different things on the guitar. Like like, and you're just thinking of, it's more arpeggios and scales. So like that's kind of how I think of music, right? um,
Hmm.
which helps because you can play any genre with that. It can be more jazzy, pop, country, like it all works like that because it's just a general system. But on harmonica, because a lot of people that play harmonica are not necessarily musically trained, they learn things as far as they're called positions. And I didn't even know what these were until like a couple of years ago. Because for me, it's always been about hearing it and figuring out the way to play something, just by hearing it on the instrument, because I could play it on guitar. So if I could play on guitar, a lot of it I can play on harmonica. There are some limitations on the harmonica as far as what you can or can't do, but um, a lot of people that play harmonica and don't play on other instruments, they think more in positions and patterns. So like this is called second position. If you are in first position, you're like more the Bob Dylan kind of style,
Hmm.
right? And then there's third position. But like like it's like for a lot of them, it's really just about memorizing patterns and putting them on an instrument. So that can make you very skillful technically. But then when you have to actually do something different, you don't know what to do because you don't know how the actual music scales work. You just have some patterns worked out on the harmonica that work out for you, but that they don't necessarily allow you to have a wider range. So there's a song that I wrote, for example, that's more of that sort of gypsy jazz style. And every time, like people ask me if I play chromatic harmonica, which I don't, because yeah, you can't really play that with a harmonica rack around your neck, right? Because you need to push that button to get certain notes. And so on this song, like I do stuff that people that play straight, like the regular harp, like I do, they have no idea of what I'm doing, because mine is more a melodic approach. I'm like, oh yeah, I can play this way, I can play that note on this harmonica that way, but I don't really think of patterns. I think more of melodies. So the song is something like this. so like that's it's more of a melodic sort of situation where I'm like, oh yeah, this is a nice melody. I could play it on this harmonica, and but for somebody that just plays harmonica and doesn't really, have necessarily like much music theory knowledge or a melodic approach, they wouldn't know. And that actually surprised me when I found out because I showed this to like a few people that have more technique than I do on harmonica, but they're like, I have no idea how you play that. I'm like, I don't know, it's easy. It's you just hear it. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting because my approach to harmonica has been different compared to most people that just play harmonica.
Yes, it does. Well, I'm just floored. Just, I mean, I know you say that, like, you don't play very, quickly and all these things, but I don't play guitar or harmonica. So to me, it's like, I'm just like,
Well, I mean,
wow, there's just so much
I
going on.
do no. So like let me rephrase. I do, but it's not really like I'm not a technical player. So like you're not gonna find me here playing stuff like like taking like a solo that's all a bunch of like fast stuff for like you know 15 minutes, right? Like I can
Hmm.
do some. It's not I can hang with these people if I need to, but I don't really care. Like I guess I put it that way. Like, and I'm not saying that like I don't want to sound like I'm better than them because I don't care. It's just not really what I aim
Right.
for. For me, it's more having like a versatility and be able to adapt to a lot of different situations. So there's this guy I play with in New York. He's one of the most known fusion jazz guitarists. His name is Noe, and I mean, he's amazing. Like I call him the guitar wizard. He's got so much knowledge and chops on the instrument. It's incredible. But like I make it work. Like when we play together, he does his stuff, and I do my stuff, and it works out pretty well. It doesn't sound like, oh man, here's the good guitarist and here's the blah guitarist, right? It kind of works out in different ways because my approach and the different styles that I put into the music make it kind of like an equal thing, right? So like he's really
Yeah.
good at something, but I bring a different flavor to the picture. So it's
Yeah, it's
but
about
I
complementing each other, right?
right. And
Yeah.
but I guess I have enough skills where I can be on the same gig with him and not be completely just like, oh man, this guy is sending me home, right? Even though
Yeah.
he's one of the best guitarists around as far as technique and everything, like you know. And but I'm not really trying to compete with him, like, and that's what I
Right.
see in a lot of situations where you have like somebody that's really skillful, and then you have like somebody else that's trying to do the same thing that they're doing. I'm like, man, like as soon as that happens, I'm out. Like I'm not trying to compete with you. And I
Right.
remember sometimes, I was at Berkeley and I was like jamming with people, and everybody was trying to like outcool each other. Yeah, we're playing cool stuff and blah blah. And like I remember I came in and played like, all these guys were like showing off all their complicated stuff, and I came in and I just played like one note, and everybody was like, oh, so it's like you just counter, and that's I think what's helpful about my approach is like I can kind of adapt to whatever situation it is. So it's if it's like everybody's trying to show each other off, I'll come in and play something that's completely the opposite, but I can kind of own it, right? And
Hmm.
do something that's gonna you know have a good response and a good effect on the music, because for me it's more about music than showing off your chops. That's
Exactly. Yeah, just keeping the music first. That sounds like this is like good advice for just keeping harmony within a group. Just kind of putting the egos aside and keeping the music
Yeah,
first
well,
can be.
yeah. There's a lot of situations where I've been, a professional, where I've been yelled at or I've been told not to do certain things, or somebody that's cutting me off in the middle of my solo or whatever. But like I don't have time to get upset about that. Like I'd rather you be clear, even if I think you're wrong, or even if not necessarily that, but even if I think that you may not have the best idea, like I'd rather for you to tell me clearly what you want than do all this underlying stuff where you're trying to like make me upset, which is not gonna
Yeah.
work because
Yeah.
I don't take things personal. Like I've been around, I've done stuff for a while, and I don't have time to get my ego hurt if
Mm.
someone does something. And I think a lot of people, are kind of like they don't know what to do with that because literally like I don't really like I'll say what I think if I feel like it's the right thing to do. But if somebody does something that's clearly to try to like you know make my life hard, I'm just like
Yeah.
whatever. Like I just kind of dismiss it and keep doing what I need to do because I know that by being professional and doing my job and putting my best into the performance, even if somebody's trying to go against me, like I'm not gonna fight that fight. I'll find a way to make it work, but I'm not gonna fight with you. I'm just gonna figure it out, and then if I don't want to work with you again, I just won't in the next time. And
That makes sense.
but I mean, it's interesting because I see a lot of people that get their ego hurt so easy, and I'm like, man, like why? Like, what's the point of that? But I mean, it's true in life in general, and so I think that's you know, it's just a big thing for me. But I don't really have time to take things personal. I feel like that's just I don't know. You're just wasting time. You just if you're upset about something, you can figure it out and like talk it over, and but taking things personal, it's just it to me actually showcase a lot of insecurities. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have insecurities. We all do, but I don't know, when you're in a professional environment and you're trying to make it as a musician, you're going to encounter some people that will try to make your life hard. So you just deal with it. And
Hmm.
and move on and surround yourself with people that want to support you. And if people don't want to support you, that's too bad.
True, true.
uh, but as long as you find try the first thing you do when something happens and somebody attacks you in a certain way. Like my first approach is, okay, what's the solution to the problem that's happening? Like I'm not gonna sit here and be like, man, I can't believe this person treated me like that. Okay, sure, you can say that for about 5 minutes, and then it's like, but okay, how can we get out of this complicated situation so I'm not going to be upset about it anymore, you know? And I think the
Hmm.
best way in general, in music, but also in life, is to kind of figure out some actions that are going to work in your favor instead of if somebody is confronting you, like about something, if you're going to get in a fight with them, then you're both automatically losing because I mean the other person is probably not going to listen to what you have to say because they're already upset with you, right? So
Yeah.
if when that's if that's happening, then it's better to in your mind think, okay, what's the solution? Maybe it's long term. Maybe it's going to work out in a week, but how can I make this work for the next time, right? I don't know. That's kind of my approach in general to life and music, and it seems to work out okay.
Hmm.
I don't really have anybody that I don't want around or situations where I know that I would be unhappy, right? If I see that, I'll do it once and then I try to walk away or find a way to make it better for myself.
Yeah. And I mean that sounds like really good advice, like you said, for music and for life. And it sounds like something that would mesh really well with your feel good approach to music, even like, whether it be you performing songs that feel good and that sound um up, like it's not they're not necessarily upbeat, but they do have a full sound to them and they do make you feel good, and they certainly have feeling in each of the
Yeah.
songs that you've sampled and played for us. So that brings me actually to my next question about you made a comment earlier where you said that music that feels good is what gets the gig, right? So my question for you is, how do you usually go about finding gigs? And also, you've played in duos, trios, so on. How do you
By
go about
myself,
finding
yeah.
people to perform with? Yeah, and also solo. Yeah, yeah. But
Well, I moved to New York.
yeah.
I moved to New York because my friends from school from Berkeley moved here, and basically, I mean, the first time I came to New York, I was like, man, I'm never moving here. It's too chaotic, too much. I was in Times Square and I hated it. I was like, man, I feel like I'm part of like a weird video game, like all of this mayhem and just craziness. I was like, oh man. But my friends moved here, and the thing that I realized when I heard them play is like how much better the musicians and people they became once they moved here. Like more maturity, less ego, and that's gave me a push to like try it out. And it's really through these guys Eric and Jordan, keyboard player and drummer, that I got my in. because they'd be like, oh, you should come see this, you should come hang out with this person or meet this other person. And, sometimes somebody would let me sit in, or, they introduced me to someone that introduced me to someone else. And, it just kind of worked out that way. And, in 2018, I lost my visa. I was stuck out of the country for 6 months. So I lost everything again, and I moved back, and I just, you know, so it's been just ups and downs. But now I'm working. Like last week, I had like the last 3 weeks, I had 12, 12, and 13 gigs. Um, so a lot of days were doubles, and tomorrow is off so far. So far would be November 1st, but the last day off I had was October 8th, and that's because something was canceled. So it's just like there is like I'm so busy now, but it's really worked out because of me just showing up and doing what I'm asked to do on the gig and more, and being adaptable. So like I was here during COVID, and as soon as July of 2020 came, a few bars started um, having outdoor music where you could play, for tips basically. And the owner of this bar hit me up because he had seen me play somewhere else, and he just opened a place. And so he was like, "Okay, you need to play outside, but you can't have amplification." I was like, "Ugh, okay." But I ended up getting myself like a six-string banjo that basically is plays like a guitar, but it's way louder. And so if I was on the sidewalk, people could hear me. And I had my tambourine going, and the guitar and the harmonica. So I played either by myself or with a bass player, or with a saxophone player. And it's just really about being adaptable and figuring out, it's COVID, we're playing outside. Did I like it? No, I didn't necessarily like playing outside on the sidewalk for tips. But the gig eventually ended up working out, and I was working basically immediately because I was willing to be adaptable to whatever situation. And I hired people that would be adaptable because all over these years in New York, I've met so many people, and I had a recommendation from people and everything. So like I have a lot of different projects, a lot of different bands. I have a surf rock group. I play with like jazz, blues, whatever, with singers, R&B, original music, just whatever comes. And I like to kind of find people that are adaptable to work with. So, I have a lot of musicians that know some of my music, but sometimes if I work with certain people, I'll create a different repertoire for that group. And I also did a project on YouTube. It's called Blind Selfie, where I actually took my own videos. And I, during the time where I wasn't working as much, I learned one song every day and posted on YouTube, and it's still there. It's all on the YouTube Blind Selfie channel, and it was over like 530 songs that I did. So all that to say, like I just try to keep myself busy and learn and figure out ways to adapt to whatever situation came, and that's what allows me to get the gigs that I have. And I used, New York is called Access a Ride. I'm sure in other places it's called something different. I know in Boston it's called the Ride, but it's basically a paratransit service that would take you to the gigs. For a while I used it, but since COVID it's been really unreliable. So I figured out my way with the trains, and bringing stuff and having equipment that's portable is key, because you're obviously there is no reason. I don't need to explain why, but you know that's how I do it. And if you're like, oh, you need this, okay, no problem. I'll bring whatever equipment you need, and I have inexpensive portable equipment that I can carry around. Um, you know, and I
That's
always
good.
try to keep my hands free. I have usually a guitar in the back and a backpack or an amp strapped to the front. Yeah, it's heavy, but I mean, I don't want to have my hand taken by something. So that usually I take the train and walk to the gigs with stuff. But if somebody's willing to help me, sure, I'll take it. I'm not here trying to be Mr. Proud, everything by myself. But I also realized but I also realized that a lot of the times you have to do that in order to figure things out, and so that's that. But I just showing up and doing a good job is really the way to get gigs. It takes a while, but if you keep at it and have a good attitude and get to know people, and you have to be a good person too. You can't just be a good musician and have a bad attitude. Like you have to you have to treat people well, and
For
that's the big
sure.
thing. And the other thing is because of the recognition I have on social media, like John Mayer reposted me to his TikTok and everything, so that helped me to get a couple of endorsements. And some of the people, like this Oz Noe guitarist, or Adam Levy, who's a guitarist that played on all Nora Jones's records. Like, these guys will come and play with me now, and I make sure that when I hire people, I have money for them, and I pay
Mm-hmm.
them, you know, whether it's Venmo or cash. Like, I pay people what right away. I don't wait around for blah blah blah. And I mean, I'm not everybody can afford to do that, and I know I can afford to do that because I'm working every day. So, like, I'll have the money from something else, and eventually I get the money from that gig, right? So that's why it's working out for me. And I'm not saying that that's good work out for everyone, but you have to treat people well when you hire them. You can't just be like, especially if you're hiring somebody that has a better resume than you can just say, oh, help me from the kindness of your heart. Like, it doesn't work like that. You have to promise something and give that, and allow people to feel like they are important, not just they're just giving you a service. Like, they have to be part of something, and that really helps. Like, so, like, a lot of times when I hire these people, I make sure that I learn a few songs from their repertoire. So when we do the gig, we can do their music too, and it's not just about me and my music, right? Because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like you learn something when you learn someone else's music anyway. So I if I hire somebody that's anybody really, I'll always ask them, hey, is there any songs you want to do? Like, I'm not somebody that comes in and is like, here's 50 songs for you to learn in a week. I'll be like, oh, check out these 2 or 3 songs. A lot of the stuff I can show you on the gig, and tell me if there's any songs you want to do. I want people to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And then if I see that the partnership works out and people are willing to learn a couple of songs, then I'll send them more stuff later. I just don't want people to stress out. And I know everybody's working hard and we're all trying to figure it out. So I'm not here trying to be like, I'm the most important thing for you today for $100. Like, I hate that, man. Like, when people do
Yeah.
that, I'm like, man, like, because I know how it feels because I've been a sideman a lot, and I'm still a sideman. So, like, if somebody, like, I don't care who you are, like, I mean, unless it's like some major pop star, like, if the gig pays $100, why would I sit here? And of course I'll do my best, but, like, why would I sit here and learn 30 songs for your bar gig? Like, no. Okay, let's figure
Mm-hmm.
out three, four,
Mm-hmm.
5 songs that I'll learn, and then we'll collaborate on everything else, and then we'll build it from there. And if there are more gigs, then we'll do more gigs, right?
Yeah.
And learn more
Yeah.
music. But it's just like, so I do the same, with people. Like, I'll send them like a couple of songs, if that, and then just like, we'll figure it out. There's a lot of songs that are pretty simple that I can just show you on the gig, especially if it's a laid back kind of situation. Now, if the gig pays well and it's like a nice gig and whatever, then it's different, right? But
Yeah.
I also make sure that everybody's aware of that. And even then, I try not to make it too hard because I know that everybody's working. And if you give someone a lot of work with little time, the result is not going to be as good. And I like to be adaptable. So, I know what somebody's good at, and, try to figure out what they're good and they're not as good at. And so, like, I kind of adapt to that too. There's a lot of factors, that you put into consideration. But, as long as you don't stress out about stuff, because a lot of times, literally, I'll have people pull out of the gig like 3 hours before the gig. So I'm like, well, instead of yelling at them, I'm gonna be like, okay, well, I have 3 hours to find someone. All right, let me figure it out. I've had to do it recently, where, like, the drummer couldn't do it and the bass player couldn't do it, so I had to put a whole band together, and I hired a drummer and then asked him to get a bass player. He got someone, then I got a keyboard player, and the gig was a lot of fun. It was a 4-hour gig, so I had to come up with like 20 something songs. But I gave everyone a lot of solos, and we just kind of worked through it. But it's just like I refuse to get super stressed out about it, right? Like, and I'm not saying I'm gonna show up unprepared, but I make sure that I have enough songs that the band is gonna sound good, even if we don't have a rehearsal or if we don't have time to learn each other's music because it's a Saturday and you got the gig on a Friday. And the last thing
Mm-hmm.
you want to do is, when you come home at 2 in the morning on a Friday night, is spend your Saturday day checking out 10 songs for some gig that's a one-off. Like, I don't want to do that. Why would someone else want to do that? You know? So, like, I just try to be flexible and have tunes that are easy. especially on the first gig, and then later I'll show more complicated stuff and whatever. But people like to see also immediacy and people having fun on stage. So as long as you have musicians that are good and are not gonna basically like they have enough experience to know that even if we're improvising, we'll figure something out and like I'm clear with my cues. So like I have things that I do with me get my guitar headstock that people can see, or like I'll say something on the microphone, be like, "Oh, hey, you take a solo now," you know. Um, so there's a lot of different things, and I've if I put my hand out in a fist, that means that you're gonna take a break, like do breaks in the song, or there's like different things that I do visually that people can see, and as long as they know they're watching me, everything is gonna be okay.
Have you ever done this? Now brings me to a question that I did not originally have. Have you ever done a gig with a blind person before, or a
Yeah. Oh,
blind
yeah.
band?
Definitely. Definitely.
That's fun.
Not in a blind band, but I
Hmm.
mean, one of my friends, he's from Trinidad, and we have written music together. And um, it is interesting because obviously the visual cues that I give, I can't give, so I have to give sonic cues.
Hmm.
But it works out. I mean, sometimes there's been definitely funny moments where he's tried to do something and I tried to do something different, so one of the two had to adjust. You know, it does happen,
Yeah.
but as long as you communicate, I think it's possible.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I'm
No, I was
not
just
opposed to it.
curious. No, no, I was just curious. When you were mentioning the different hand signals that you use, but this is all very, very interesting and good advice for people who are performing. But honestly, this is just good advice for people who are working in group settings and in team settings about
Yeah,
just, not like you want to take it seriously, but you don't want to take it like to the point where you're getting anxious and becoming like angry or
yeah.
rude
But you
or,
still
yeah.
the one thing I will say though is like there are some people that are just a mess, and
Hmm.
that doesn't help. Like
No,
because I mean you have to have somewhat of an idea on how to make it work, right?
of
Even if you
course.
don't have everything worked out, right?
Hmm.
You have to
Hmm.
make sure you know how to keep everything together and also cover up for other people's lacks, right?
Yeah,
And
for
I don't
sure.
mean that in a negative way, but like let's say somebody doesn't pick up a part or somebody isn't necessarily strong at something, you have to make sure you know how to cover that, so things
Hmm.
don't fall apart. Because I do see the opposite end of things where people are just like, oh yeah, whatever. But then you show up to a show and it's just a train wreck and nobody really knows what they're doing, and it's like if you're a band leader you need to make sure that you, even if you don't have anything prepared, you need to make sure that you know how to lead your band, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's either one or the like, but you have to have some sort of an idea of how to make things work. And I don't sing, so all my stuff is instrumental, so that's a whole other thing. But it works out, like a lot of times people like are like, oh, I don't know if I can hire you without a singer, and then regularly they stuff works out really well. So it's like, oh, I didn't, even some musicians were like, it's rare for me to see an instrumental show where people are really as into it as they are. So I'm like, yeah, it's because it's just it works out, and so yeah, I mean, I guess
Good.
that's if that makes sense, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
well, another thing I play, we're talking about instruments is I don't know if anybody if you know what the slide is. It's like you put
No.
on your ring finger on your left hand, and you just like.
Ah.
And so I do that too, when I play live shows. And what's interesting about the slide, something that you know, uh, it has worked out well for me, and I don't know why people haven't done this before. So when you play, I place the slide on my pinky, and uh, I realized like a few years ago that if like the fretboard of the guitar ends right about here where the sound hole starts. So like that's the highest note you can play on this guitar, which is a C,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And but if you play with the slide, like I'm right here now, right? But if you
Hmm.
keep going on top of the sound hole on this acoustic guitar, you can do an electric too. You can keep playing. So And you can go up, as up as like up here, but obviously there it's harder to hear the sound. But what's interesting is like I use that all the time, and I realized, man, like nobody has done this before. I'm like, why? Like it seems like so intuitive, you know? I mean, it's a lot harder to be in tune because obviously, like the slide, the way it works, obviously you don't feel the frets. You're just like sliding the thing on the fretboard or
Hmm.
off the fretboard in this situation. But I thought this could be interesting to someone, like if they're doing. It's like it's actually you just gotta do it, and you gotta hear your way through
Yeah.
it. Anyway, so like I just thought I'd bring that in and show you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, no, thank you for doing that because I've never heard of a slide before. And also, that sounds like an interesting way to get some, since you don't have a vocalist, when you play, that seems like an interesting way to get, um, some higher notes that could be potentially
Yeah,
sung
yeah, yeah. I
by,
guess so.
like
Yeah, because
Mariah
that's
Carey.
in
I don't know,
that's like in
but like,
the. Oh yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean?
What's that
Like just
song?
doing like a like a really high note. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the Mariah notes. What's that
Yeah,
song?
yeah,
I don't even
exactly,
remember what that song
exactly.
is called.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Anyways, that's a Mariah
Yeah, yeah.
song.
I know the song you're talking about though.
Yeah, yeah,
But but yeah, so that does sound like something that would be definitely good for our listeners to know about. But you mentioned earlier about having instruments that are portable.
yeah.
Um
Yes.
and then, we know that you're playing this guitar and harmonica at the same time. What does that what So you said that you'll keep your guitar, I think you said in like a backpack. And then you said that you have this harmonica rack. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's like you put it on your neck, right? So I mean, it's called a rack and
So
or
you just so
holder.
it'll just like hold the harmonica for you. Is that all that's happening? So all you have to do is just
Yeah,
like turn your head. Oh, this is very
yeah, it's
interesting.
it's around my neck, yeah, and you just snap the. This one is magnetic, so
Hmm.
if I grab a harmonica, like you just put it against it, and it just like attaches it, and then I don't have to hold it anymore. And you just have it on, and you don't have
Wow.
to worry about it. And I have
S-
a little bag with all the different keys. I have all 12 keys of the harmonica, and so I also have a capo for anybody who I don't know if you
Yeah,
know what it is.
I
Yeah,
do.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so you put that up. I mean, I don't use it very much. I only use it if I'm playing with like singer songwriters or I want so like I do have one, but I don't use it that much. Sometimes.
So
Um,
I know the capo is super portable. What
Brown
about the
rock.
rack? How big is the rack? Is it pretty like what does
Yeah,
it
if
look
it's
like?
if you have a guitar kit bag with a pocket, it will fit in there. And usually I have,
Ah,
I have a bag with the 12 harmonicas, the rack. I put a cable. I have a pedal, like a distortion pedal, because most of my gigs are on electric guitar. And then I have that footstool because I want to have my left leg elevated, but that folds up, so it all fits in there. Um, you know, so
wow.
yeah, it all fits. And then I have a mic stand. Well, that's the hardest part because it's hard to find mic stands that are sturdy and have a boom. You know what I mean? Like the thing that comes
Mm-hmm.
out yeah. So so you can actually sit down and have like the microphone in front of you instead of it being like between your legs, right? Because straight
Yeah.
stands are more that way. Um, and there's a few companies that make portable boom stands, but they're hard to find and they tend to be long and hard to carry. But I have one. It kind of fell apart though, so I'm waiting for a new one. Hopefully, it's more sturdy than the first one. That's something that I think somebody should design, like a portable boom microphone stand that fits in a bag that you can just strap on your shoulder on your guitar side, and it's not going to be longer than your guitar, and then you're tripping on it while you're walking. And then I have this amplifier. Well, I have a couple of different portable amplifier. One is for acoustic guitar, and it has also an input for a microphone. And it actually comes with this giant backpack that you put it in, and it has a pouch where you can put, if you want to put your microphone or your microphone cable, power strip, stuff like that. So yeah, it's like 20 pounds. So like at the end of the day, you probably lift somewhere around 40 pounds, some on your back and some on the front. So it's not ideal. But I mean, if you have to, you bring everything. I always try to play gigs where they have backline, but if they don't, I can bring it. I don't like to, and obviously it slows you down a lot because you got this big thing in front of you. But it beats carrying something by hand. I noticed that if I have a cane, it's hard for me to hold something on the left hand and use the cane at the same time. Like I
For
don't know.
sure. Yeah.
I prefer having something strapped on so I can use the other hand if something happens, right?
Right.
Because if I'm wheeling something, like the other hand is basically useless, and you just need a wider range to cover with your cane. You could just like trip on stuff. I don't know. I just find it harder to carry stuff by hand than to carry it on my shoulders. I'd rather have a free, like my other hand free. I don't know if that's a me thing or it's true for everyone, but it's just hard for me to carry stuff, especially heavier equipment. Even a cart would be harder for me. Like it's easier on the street, but other times in New York you've got the stairs and the train and everything, and
So
you
many
don't have
people
that.
everywhere.
Right, right, exactly. So it's just easier to deal with on your shoulders. Now, it's definitely ends up being painful sometimes, on your shoulders, and I'm sure I'll need a massage or something at some point. But I mean, what else are you gonna do? I don't really see another solution at the moment. So.
So you have your portable um equipment that
Yeah.
you bring to the gigs. You find
I also
well
have
you
I have finally have a portable stool too. Just recently, I
oh
acquired one um, that I use either to sit down or to use next to me, so I don't have the harmonicas on the ground.
yeah.
But I can't carry everything all the time, so it's not it's just a lot of stuff I have, and there's all different amps I have too. For different gigs and different sounds you need. Like I do have a lot of stuff that I acquired over the years. And what were you gonna ask me?
So yeah, so you told me that you met your bandmates while you were at Berkeley. What
Some
else
of
can you
them. I
tell
mean,
us
those are the
about
people
your
that
time?
that. I mean, those are some of the guys that I met, but I mean, I rarely play with them now. Like I have so many other different gigs I'm in, that like I see them, every couple of months, but I play with so many different people. But I mean, at Berkeley, I met a lot of different great musicians, and like my singer friend from Trinidad, we wrote a lot of music, and that's the blind guy I was telling you about. And at Berkeley, like I learned a lot, and it was cool to get all the awards and everything. But the main thing was really the experience of interacting with people from all over the world with different cultures and different music. And it's kind of like a little New York in a certain way. Like you have so many different people that are really good that bring in different cultural elements, and that's the biggest lesson. Like just figuring out, you know, like in New York, you figure out how to make it work with different musicians, and you learn something because everybody has different, just different backgrounds and different types of music they play and they're into. So being at Berkeley allows you to do that if you're open minded. And there's a few things that I did that I wasn't supposed to do that I was very happy I did. And one of them was they have these like band auditions that you do where they place you in different ensembles according to your skills. They're called
Hmm.
rating audition because they're literally rating you. Um, and every student is supposed to be part of these bands, especially in their later semesters, just to get points towards your graduation. You're supposed to do that, or you're encouraged to do that. But a lot of people don't want to because you end up just sitting there for a few hours backing up other people that have songs, and sometimes they're not very good. But I wanted to because I like the idea of just being there and listening to and meeting other students and stuff. And but I wasn't supposed to do it because as blind people, like if somebody gives us a chart, we can't read it. So I still signed up for it and they let me. And I did it for 2 semesters, and it was a lot of fun. And a lot of the times I realized, like, man, like it's because I ended up learning some of the exercises. So like I knew like some of the drum exercises that they would ask the students because I did it for a little bit. So like I just memorized stuff, but I wasn't supposed to do it because somebody came with a chart. I wouldn't be able to read it. Um, but if you play guitar, I feel like a lot of the times the responsibility of knowing exactly what's happening doesn't really lay on you. It's a lot on the piano player. right? That is expected to be able to read.
Right.
Not that a guitarist is not, but generally speaking, a lot of the songs have like a piano intro or have some sort of piano thing. So for me, it was kind of easy to just chill and figure out the songs as we went. And nobody really had a complaint about anything. It was a couple of times somebody tried to hand me a chart, and I was just like, yeah, I can't see it. But it was a good challenge for me to to step into something that was completely unknown and figure something out, right? Um, so I did that, and then at the last time, like it was like my last semester, like the last one I was supposed to do, somebody comes in and was like, "Hey, you're not supposed to be in here." Because as a blind person without being able to read charts, you actually are not supposed to do those, like you're exempted. But for me it was so much fun, and I was like, it's one of the most fun experiences I had, because I would be in a room with musicians I didn't know, the teachers and the students. And once they realized that I was able to kind of hang on and figure it out, then it worked out pretty well. And it ended up being a very fun experience for me. So but a lot of different things, just playing with different people. And I studied with Mick Goodrick, who is an amazing jazz guitarist, and he worked, with Pat Metheny and stuff like that. So it was a good experience, if because I was able to navigate and figure out who the best teachers and students would be, to help me become a better musician. So I think it's worth it, if you kind of figure out how to navigate the environment. And you know so that's kind of how it worked out for me. I mean, it's really expensive, and I was glad to have a scholarship, I'll tell you that.
Scholarships are nice for sure. Well, that was my last main question. So why don't you share with us some of your social media, and then maybe because I know you don't mind just being on the spot, so I'm comfortable to ask you this. Why don't you share your social media, and then when you're done, just start playing something, and I'll kind of give the thank yous and the closing remarks with some accompaniment, if that's okay.
Sure. Well, you can find me on social media. Simple Blues Boy is my Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, Noe, Noe, and my last name is Socha, Socha. And I have a record out. You can find it on my website. My website is noemusic.net, noemusic.net. And yeah, I'm on all the social media. I used to be on Clubhouse. I don't use it anymore. I'm too busy, but I'll get back on it. But Simple Blues Boy on there also. And just the record is on my website, and it's a surf rock record. So you're playing all this music, like this song. This song, right? That's not
Sure
on the
do.
record, but that's the kind of genre. That's the kind of genre that we play on that record. And the group is called the New York Gremlins, like really bad surfers, which is definitely, don't ask me to surf. I don't know, I don't even know how to start. But yeah, so that's my social media, Simple Blues Boy on Twitter, Instagram, and yeah, TikTok, and Facebook too, Noe Socha. Um, let's see. I think yeah, I'll play one of the songs from. Actually, no, I'm not gonna play one of the songs from the record. There's this other song I'm gonna play. It's actually kind of funny. So you know how everybody calls the cane walking stick, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's obviously it's cane, and but I wrote a song, and because of that, I decided to call it Walking Stick Blues. So I feel like that's a good way to end this thing.
This is a really good way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Noe, for joining us today. And thank you, Shane, for producing as always, for the connection. Thank you, as always, to all of our listeners. We love having you join us for the show. This has been another outstanding episode of Scene Change.
I'm Caitlin McIntyre, President of the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Scene Change. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and visit our website at nfb-pad.org. There you'll find links to our social media, membership, and resources for blind performers. Thanks to everyone who makes this show happen. Scene Change is produced by Shane Lowe, Joe Schuneman, Precious Perez, Chris Nussbaum, Seyoon Choi, and Aaron Jordan, with music by Ryan Strunk and Tom Page. Remember, you can be the performer you want. Blindness is not what holds you back. We'll see you next time.